Hey guys, it's Laz here with Mittani.com, and with me I have CCP Seagull. And I guess to sort out everything, we're just going to kind of go into what she does with CCP, her job title, what her day-to-day is like, and really what her future visions for EVE Online are. So, thank you for coming on, rather. But so, CCP Seagull, what is your actual role with CCP, title, and just kind of what do you do day-to-day, and I guess, how have you changed things from past executive producers?
All right. Well, yeah, so I'm the executive producer for EVE Online, and it's a management job. It means I work with setting the high-level direction for the game. I'm responsible for the whole business of EVE Online. And of course, we have a bunch of teams and departments that are kind of run themselves and so on, but I own the budget for the whole thing and really make the big priority calls.
Can I have one? Oh, not that type of budget. Okay. Well, so in the past, we've moved from a 2 expansion a year to multiple releases every 6 weeks, I believe it's down to.
It's 5 weeks.
5 weeks. Sorry.
CCP Explorer will come and hunt us down and tell us it's 5 weeks.
We don't want that. I've seen his Twitter campaigns.
Yes, it's 5 weeks.
So in the past, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, bottlenecks. Can you explain that for the guys who have been watching this video, the bottlenecks that were in place before you've taken over as executive producer?
Yeah, well, so one of the changes that it's maybe less visible from the outside is that with the new release cadence, we've also made some changes to the organization that works on EVE. And mostly to just cut out bottlenecks and a lot of process that was sometimes blocking things. And a lot of that had to do with the 6-month release cadence, because when you're going to put a lot of marketing power behind an expansion and you're going to put it out there, then as a senior producer that I was at that time, I had to be super involved in making a lot of decisions about what was going in there exactly, because there was so much else that was kind of hanging on this expansion. And now that we're more releasing continuously and so on, we don't have this, we're not building up to these big hype moments, then actually a lot of the knowledge for what priorities to make and so on are within the teams that are working on the game. And we're a software development studio and so on, and so we're using agile software development, and there's a role in that called product owner, where usually the idea is that you have a team that's good at making software, but maybe not so good at knowing what the customer wants or what the business needs. So you have this other person called product owner that's supposed to bring those perspectives and make kind of all the priorities. And we had that role and so on, and I was the senior producer in the past. I would work with those product owners to try and make decisions and so on. But what I really find is that most of the knowledge for what we want to do with the game is actually in the teams. And having these product owners would create this weird bottleneck where someone who didn't have the most knowledge was the person who was supposed to make all the priority calls. And there was a lot of permission asking and validating of a lot of plans that were really obvious. And so what we've done now is make the teams themselves the product owners of what they're working on, which means that for the 80% of the stuff where the team, the people, the designers and programmers on the teams just know what makes sense to do, they don't have to ask anyone for permission. Okay. And for the 20% of the cases maybe where they have plans that might go in some direction that raises some questions and whatever, then we can have a discussion. But when that's not needed, why should there be all this permission asking? So I think that's what can somehow be felt a little bit when talking to people who work on EVE Online now, is that they have much less of this overhead to deal with. And a lot of stuff just keeps rolling out, like fixes, changes, like UI programmers who are just implementing stuff and that's in response to requests from the community and so on. I'm not even involved in that anymore, and I used to be in the past. And so this is a big part of the change you're seeing as well.
And is this something that you came up with before you became executive producer, or is it something that, as your past job here, you kind of saw how things were, and then when you got into the executive producer position, you were like, I think we could do that better instead of having these people that we have to go and ask permission for every little minute detail, and then wait for them to come back to us so before we can move forward. So I guess what I'm asking is, when did you know this is how you wanted to operate?
I mean, it's always like a thing that develops, and it's not just my ideas, and we have a production team who's working on continuously improving how we do things, and it's a discussion between the teams and me and so on. But it's something that we did pretty much at the same time with the new release cadence, and something that had come out of my experience with trying to make priorities around features, especially for the expansions, and being really quite frustrated with it, how it was working, and feeling like there was just too much of this overhead going on. So it kind of grew as a decision, and then at some point I was just like, we're trying to staff product owners and trying to figure out who should do it and how it would work, and there's always this discussion, oh, this really great game designer, because he knows all the stuff, shouldn't he be the product owner? But then there's all of this administrative work on product owners, so then you would take that person out of his actual job where he would be contributing. So in that process, we've actually gone and kind of turned the organizational chart kind of upside down, and made everyone who's in a management or producer position in a kind of servant role to those who actually deliver the changes into the game.
Okay.
So the teams are kind of at the top of the org chart now, and then we have a couple of support structures, one around like teams and staffing, where you have like people who can support with that, make sure the right people are working on the teams, and make sure that teams have help with method and process and so on. But so the team decides what they should be doing in discussion with me, and then they have production help for how to get it done.
Right.
But that's a big difference from having production help telling you what to do, right? So we've kind of turned that around, and we have like the production team, we have like mugs that say Eve Grease Monkey, because we're we're changing just our role from being kind of the people who are the important people to being the people who should enable those who actually make change to the game to get more stuff done.
Yeah, well, we can definitely see the results of that. I think going from the twice a year to every 5 weeks has definitely been a huge improvement, and like we were talking about earlier, the player base has come around to that, and they know that not every single expansion is going to be some huge thing, like the soft expansion will be. It's going to be rather large comparatively to other expansions.
Yeah.
And I think definitely the community is showing their support for this, and they're really happy with it. And I guess basic TLDR of how the CCP development cycle works is you have teams, and then you pretty much say, here's our roadmap, and I want you to take this line of it, and so because like in the keynote, if you look at the room, you have SOV and then in the corporate structure and all that. So basically, this top slot is Team 5.0, and then the next section is I'm trying to think of another team name, but just another team.
Yeah.
So it's. And they make their decisions, and once you've kind of pointed them in the direction, you just kind of step back and watch, unless they actually come into like a fork in the road and need an opinion.
Yeah, and then we meet regularly, we discuss back and forth, but it's really, the approach is really about unblocking all the knowledge and passion in the teams and with the people who work on the game, and just making sure that there's nothing in the way.
Wow.
Like once we decide together that this is a good priority direction, strategy is to really have the sandbox gameplay in EVE Online. That's what we're investing in, that's what we want to develop and to be awesome. And now we're doing a bunch of stuff to get that into a really good place. And that is also the strategy to get new players, because if people are having fun in EVE, then there's a good chance that more people will join them. And even if you don't get recruited directly from, Reddit or something awful or whatever into an existing organization like that, if you just see an ad on the internet and go, oh, science fiction game, I'm going to try that out, then if you're coming into a community that is, healthy and happy and having fun, there's much greater chance that you're going to stick around.
Right, and I think you really saw that after This Is EVE. You saw all the let's get mentors and find yourself a newbie and kind of just guide them along. Because I started 10, 11 years ago, and if I hadn't had a friend to play with me and kind of show me or just take my questions, then I would have quit a month and a half into the game.
Yeah.
But instead, 12 days in, I was pretty much sold, and I've been here ever since. Unfortunately for you guys. But it's definitely really, like, before I started speaking with you this morning, I didn't really know how the development cycle went, and I think myself and anyone who's viewing this video will be much more appreciative, especially since Eve is full of giant nerds.
But it is also a big change from the past, and I think a lot of people who've been around Eve for a long time, they, of course, all of your experiences with how it worked in the past, where we had both the old release cadence with a lot of weird pressure from that building up to these big moments, and actually 10 years ago, shipping once per year or even twice per year into any game, that was fast back then.
Right.
So we're really just kind of, taking the same approach. I mean, what other games 12 years ago were patching once a year? Like big, expanding every year.
I can't think of one, because like most games you'd have an expansion pack every 4 years or so.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the normal. So EVE Online has actually had an extremely fast release cadence for the tools and software and methodology that you had back then. But now, we're just kind of updating, we're taking the same philosophies, just updating it to how fast you can go today with modern tools and all of that. So in a sense, it's more the same. But I think that when there's still some commentary in the player base where we go like, okay, we're going to make changes to Sob, and people are like, oh no, they're going to make like one change and then they're never going to touch it again for like 4 years. And we are so squarely out of that way to develop, like both with how we prioritize and with this strategy, like I said, where we don't have this big clash between making sure the game works for those who already play versus making kind of shiny new stuff for new people. That's also a thing of the past. So yeah, I think that I really wish we're starting to get to a place now where people can worry less about us kind of making broken changes and then leaving them in the game forever. I don't think we've done that for the last 2 years, 3 years almost, and so maybe people can start trusting us a little bit now.
Alright, well, I'm going to, I guess, somewhat call you out on that, but because the Ishtar changes came in, and then they haven't really been looked at till now, so it has been a while since those, and I think the ship balancing is a little bit different than your actual like soft balancing and stuff like that. But as a PvPer myself in FC, I've done a lot of nullsec, I've done a lot of the sovereignty, capturing, attacking, defending. Can we look at faster ship balancing in the future? Or like say we're going to make a change to the Tengu, and then in 2 months we're going to go back and look at it, and can we expect to see something like that for every change?
I mean, that's the intention at least. I mean, with ship balancing, I guess we're also like, it's a little bit of like a back and forth between not making changes so often that the strategies that people don't have time to stabilize. But I think in the ship balancing cases, it's more like now it's more a case of people aren't blocked from making these changes and going back and looking at it. Now we're more blocked with, like, we only have so many designers and there's so much stuff to work on. And that's a different way of being blocked than in the past, where it might have been like, okay, everyone has to work on this thing that's going to be shiny for new players, and we don't have time to kind of balance and manage the existing game. And so it's not claiming that everything we put out now is perfect in any way, but the reasons that we would kind of put something out for the splash and then not touch it again, that kind of mentality that was very much a consequence not of us being, willfully like stupid or anything. It's just very, very much a consequence of what happens to software development when you have a fixed ship date every 6 months.
Okay, yeah, it definitely makes sense, and it actually makes me kind of smug because I was actually asked the exact same question, and I gave the exact same answer. That it's probably just a designer time issue, because they have so much other stuff that they're working on at the same time. But hopefully with the newest game designer, which I don't even know if it's been announced yet, who's former players like it's Josh or CCP Fozzie and CCP Rise, CCP Larynx, I believe.
Larrikin, I think.
Larynx. It's not Larynx. So
no.
Larrikin.
Yeah.
All right. So for those of you who do play Eve and you know about I guess FCs in the game, his in-game persona is Dark Razor. He is one of the best Aussie time zone FCs in the game. So him joining the game design team, I think, will be really awesome, especially if you be able to give his input on his unique time zone.
Yeah, and that gives us really more kind of designer firepower in that direction. So we're super happy to have him on board.
Yeah. So basically, I guess it's what I call it earlier is you're mainly a babysitter when you make sure they don't get in too much trouble, but other than that, you kind of let them do their things.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I mean, sometimes people come to me with extremely specific design questions, like what's going to happen with this ship and so on. It's like, well, if you're the boss of Eve, like clearly you design or decide these things, and it's just like, no. But we have like a continuous discussion between me and the teams about what the high level like priorities are.
Right.
But like we talked about before, once we've picked the direction, then we have a shared goal, and then the people who actually know the most, they should be making the decisions about what direction we take.
All right. Well, when you're looking at features to add to your roadmap, how do you determine, or what for you is long term? What is in the future?
I mean, there's a couple of different layers of what types of features. There's a lot of stuff where quality of life stuff just has, I mean, like I was saying at eVegas, there's like full support for quality of life changes. But a lot of those are kind of small,
Right.
like fix this UI here, and like this is annoying. Can we have like a third mode in the like overview settings and so on. Like these are the kind of things that are just like fantastic. And again, that's where the process, like cutting out a lot of the overhead in the process, make a big difference, because a lot of those changes is great. A developer sitting there and they can make choices between like what it costs to implement and how valuable it would be, and only they can really know that. And they then just make a decision and make something and put it out there, and that's really great. But then of course there's quality of life topics such as with structures, right, where fixing up the existing system we don't think is a good road towards the future. So then we like zoom back out, have a bigger picture discussion about how do we improve Sandbox gameplay in Eve?
Right.
What does it mean to really invest in like Sandbox for Eve? And there's different understandings of Sandbox. I mean, for me, it means that I was talking about in the keynote, that you can affect what happens to other people.
Yeah.
So it's not Sandbox so much that there's just like a world and you can tinker with everything, but rather that what you do has effects that other people can both see and experience. And so then, instead of trying to fix pauses, we're trying to just add completely new gameplay. And so that's where, ideally then, of course, as we make a new, better system, that system should have much better quality of life, like be much more feasible and reasonable to manage, and the work should go into figuring out, like building the thing and figuring out what you want and like collaborating with other people to make that happen, not to try and like, you know, wrestle with the user interface, for example. But then the changes come because we do a whole new thing instead of trying to fix up the existing one completely. So a lot of the discussions look like that, like how do we bring something into the roadmap, but a lot of that is informed by really the decision to say Eve is about Sandbox gameplay, and so that's where the priorities are driven from. Like we're going to really improve that type of gameplay.
Yeah, and that's what Eve players are here for. They're here for that experience. They're here to know that their decisions actually have causes and effects. And like you're talking about the new POS system, that is probably the coolest thing I've seen in a long time from CCP. And just because people join 0.0 or nullsec and Eve because they like to build empires, and to be able to take POS and kind of develop the systems with the different platforms and stuff that they showed in the keynote, it feels really awesome that I can go and I can improve things with these little modules that we've never had before. I guess, where would you like to see Eve in 2 years or so?
I think I have this vision of the solar system as really the size level where you build something up. Like if a solar system is your home, and if you compare to some other games where it's like, oh, you get to build a house and you can like choose the color of the roof or whatever. And in EAM, it's more like, okay, what moon should we pick to be like, you know, the center of our industrial operations? And then, you know, this outpost here is going to be the trade, you know, center, and we're going to build a bunch of stuff around that. And like, and when you actually travel around the universe, it would be a big, if you come into system, it's like a big difference depending on what it's used for and who lives there, and you actually see completely different stuff.
Okay.
And that all of that stuff was put there by players, not by CCP. That's my sort of dream view. And I think we can get, like in the next 2 years or so, I think we can be well on our way towards that.
Yeah, that actually sounds amazing. It makes me really happy, but I do believe we're running out of time, so we'll stop it there. And I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us, and we hope to see you around FanFest and maybe get further interviews as we get toward that 2-year mark.
Yep.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.